All right, this time we're going to do a quick review of how to make your histogram. The steps are: first, get your data in order from least to greatest. No errors. No errors. You have to do that perfectly. It's not hard, but it has to be perfect. Second, doing your interval and frequency chart. And third, chart it, as in make your histogram. Let's take a look. So the first thing is to get your data set and get your data in order from least to greatest. Again, check and double check. If you have an error in this, it messes everything else up. So make sure you have each data point represented only once and it goes from least to greatest. If you haven't done that yet, pause the video, do it now, make a correction as needed, and then we can move on. So I'm going to put my data up there above me. Our second step is to make an interval and frequency chart. So before we can really make that chart, we have to think about the intervals. So I'm just going to write the word interval, which basically means like a numeric grouping. So you have to really look at your data. Look at your minimum, smallest number, and your maximum. Figure out what type of grouping makes sense. Should you do groups of hundreds? Or a group of tens? Or should it be in groups of fives? Or ones? Or should it be 20s? Or thousands? You have to think. You're the mathematician and you have to figure out what grouping makes sense. For my data going from 42 to 89, I think tens is what makes the most sense. If I make groups of 10, that's going to make a nice chart. It's going to make sense. Again, pause the video, look at your data, look at your minimum, look at your maximum, and think about what type of grouping makes sense. So I've decided on intervals of 10. Now I'm going to make my frequency and interval chart. So basically a little T-chart. On the left side, you're going to write interval. And on the right, you're going to write frequency. And then you're just going to make a record of what your intervals are. So my first number, my minimum is 42. I've decided I'm going to do intervals of 10. So my first grouping is going to be the 40s, 40 to 49. It does not go up to 50, it's just 40 to 49. Then 50 to 59, the 50s, and so forth. Make your chart as I'm making mine, and don't go on until you've completed this step. And I'm going to stop at the 80 to 89 because that fills up my whole data that I need. Next, you're going to look at your data, and you're literally just going to count how many occurrences in your data, how many data points fall within each group. So I'm just going to look. How many data points are between 40 and 49? Just the one. There it is. That one's accounted for. How many of my data points fall within the group of the 50s, 50 to 59? None. Write down the 0. How many of my data points or occurrences is in the 60 to 69 group? 2, 3, 3. 1, 2, and 3 in the 60s. How many of my data points are between 70 and 79? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many of my data points are in the 80s? 5. Again, pause the video, complete your interval and frequency chart, double check it for errors. Once you've done that, we can move on to creating the chart. All right, so now that I've got this information, I actually no longer need this one at hand. Don't throw it away, just set it to the side. I'm going to start by giving my histogram a title. Mine is relating to the resting heart rates of 6th graders, so that's what I'm going to title it, Histogram of resting heart rates. Okay, Keep it neat, keep it tidy. And now for your histogram, I gotta leave a little bit of writing space above and below, but it's basically like a large letter L. And you can see I have my paper going landscape, and that's the way you want yours also. Okay? Once I've got my lovely L there, I'm going to address the x-axis. And the way I'm going to deal with the x-axis is I'm going to figure out how many groups I need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are going to be my 5 groups. So I'm going to partition off 5 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you have more groups in your chart because you have a larger data set with me or you have smaller intervals or whatever, you just count however many sections, intervals are in your chart. That's how many parts you need separated down here. Okay? Once you have the correct number of sections, go ahead and label them correctly. These sections need to match your intervals that you've written up here. Do your data while I do mine. If you're not done at the same time as me, then you need to pause the video, complete your sections before you move on. Okay, and the next thing we need to do is to label what this is. What is it measuring? Well, in my case, it's measuring heartbeats per minute. I'm going to write that. Okay. Once you've got your group set up to match with your intervals, now we need to address the y-axis, the up axis of our chart. And the way we determine what numbers to represent here is it typically starts at 0, although sometimes charts are a little different. But typically, in this case anyway, it's starting at 0. And my histogram needs to, the y-axis needs to go high enough to have room for my highest number on my frequency table. My highest number of the frequency table is the 5. That's the most occurrences that are in any one of these groups. If yours is 12, then you need to space your numbers so you have room for 12 or a little bit above. I'm going to space mine just so that it goes up to the 5. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then label them. Pause the video if your chart does not yet look like mine. Now I'm going to title this as frequencies, or frequency of occurrences, or something like that. That'll be fine. All right, the last step is to now complete the chart. It's all set up correctly. Now I'm going to go to my 40 to 49 section, find it here. I'm going to look at my frequencies, and I'm going to bring my bar up to match with whatever frequency, however many times data occurred in that grouping. In this case, 1. So I'm going to come up to the 1, check that off. That is done. Next group. Move to that group. Make sure you're talking about the same area. Look at how many times. 0. That one's already done. Move on to the next group. Talking about the same group. What's the frequency? 3. I need to come up to my 3 line. Next group, 70 to 79. Find how many, and that'll tell me how high I need to come on my chart. Bam. Check that one off. And the last group needs to come all the way up to the 5. And that is what a nice finished histogram looks like. The last step, of course, is to pretty it up with some colors and what have you to make it nice. Bueno, bye.